1. The New York City Navy SEAL swim. What's it feel like to swim 3 miles, do 300 push-ups, pull 600 pull-ups? What does it feel like to do the New York City SEAL swim? Almost as good as it feels to run through the streets of downtown Manhattan carrying American flags, serenaded by the New York Fire Department's bagpipe chorus and hugging multiple Gold Star mothers. 2, the founder of Blackwater, at one time the world's largest private security contractor, who never once lost a protectee, Erik Prince, on the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. And 3, from attacking Joe Rogan to Kamala up in the polls, what's the strategy? What's the campaign for president? We talked to senior advisor Alina Habba for Donald Trump. That's coming up now on the Will Cain Show. It is the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com and on the Fox News YouTube channel, the Fox News Facebook page, and always on demand by hitting subscribe at Apple or on Spotify or in the text description underneath this live stream, hitting subscribe on YouTube. And that way you can hang out with the Will Cain Show every Monday through Thursday live at 12 o'clock Eastern Time. Jump into the comments section and become a member of our community. Become a member of the Willitia. As did one Brent, longtime member of our community, longtime member of the Willitia, who this weekend I met in person. And we didn't just shake hands and give a bro hug. We swam across the Hudson together. Longtime listener of the Will Cain Show, Brent Suriano, signed up for the 2024 New York City Navy SEAL swim, and he became, for me, more than just a member of the audience. He became a brother. And I did meet a few of you as well out there at O'Hara's afterwards as we were throwing back a few beers. And what I did then is invite those fellas, as well as anyone else listening right now, to jump in. This time it will be on the 2025 New York City Navy SEAL swim, because I don't just want this to be a one-way conversation. It's a two-way conversation, and it's a community. And while I gave it better lip service last year, I want to make it more action this year. I want to put together a team of everyone right now watching and listening who are ready to take on that challenge. Let's talk about that challenge for a minute. The 2024 New York City Navy SEAL swim with story number 1. Let's go to the boys back in New York City. Let's go to two-a-days. Dan, Young Establishment James, and Tinfoil Pat, who I got to think participated at least virtually in the New York City Navy SEAL swim. One of my big challenges in this career, as everyone on this show knows, is that I feel like a complete and utter D-bag on social media. I have no such problems when I sit in front of a television camera or when I sit down in front of a radio microphone, but I feel like a tool when I look into my phone. But I got over it, and I streamed live on Instagram as many times as I could on Saturday, which means I've already monologued like 10 times between Fox and Friends and the Will Cain Instagram page, and hopefully soon on TikTok. So I wanted to bring you guys in to talk about this and talk about what went down on Saturday in the SEAL swim two-a-days.
No, it looked impressive. You know, you had some shirt-off shots, which is great. You know, ladies love it. It's fantastic. I just had one question, though. I mean, I'm all for short shorts, but do they get shorter than that, or was that about as high as you can go in the short?
Those are not Speedos. Those are Silkies made by Sungalife, Jeff Gum, who is a former Navy SEAL. And I think they're a good compromise. Let me tell you something about the shirtlessness and the short shorts. I once did an open water swim from Lanai to Maui, 9-mile swim, but I did a relay of six guys. It's roughly 10 years ago now. And the entire conversation before the swim was about sharks. What are we going to do? Are we going to wear electronic ankle bracelets to serve as a prod to keep sharks away? And what I would say is sharks were front of your mind for all the moments leading up to the race. But once you're in the water, it's over. You don't think about sharks anymore. And what I'm here to tell you is there's a lot of vanity and thought about shirtlessness on national television leading up to the SEAL swim. But once it starts, it's of zero thought. I'd like to think I'm in decent shape, but even if I were not, I think it would stop being a source of insecurity the minute that it starts. You're just in, man. You're doing it. And it's not to be overly melodramatic or, quasi-inspirational, but it's just all of a sudden it's just so much bigger than you and your vanity. And it's even bigger than you and your endurance. That's one of my biggest takeaways from this thing. It's just like, when you struggle physically and you're inspired emotionally, what does it matter what somebody thinks about your pecs?
No, it's true. The vanity comes after, I feel like. That's when you start worrying about it.
Yeah, it's just as a refresher, here's what it is. And I've got it for anybody watching on YouTube up on my screen here in my home studios of Dallas, Texas. You take off from Liberty State Park. You run 2 miles. You hop into the water and swim 3/4 of a mile to the Statue of Liberty. There you do 100 push-ups and 22 pull-ups on a barge just off the Statue of Liberty. Get back in the water, swim another 3/4 miles to Ellis Island, another 100 push-ups, another 22 pull-ups. And then comes the long haul. Then you got a 1.5 mile swim from Ellis Island to Manhattan. You can have the currents working in your favor. It can help. But this is also when you're crossing boat traffic. This is when the seas get choppy. This is where I paid my biggest physical price. Once you're there, when I say physical price, it hit me in 2 ways. During the event, my lower back and my legs cramped a little. Later in the day, lasting into today, it's my neck. Because I had enough seas that I had to really raise up in a water polo stroke to see and spot where I'm going. It's 5-7 strokes spot, 5-7 strokes and spot. So what I'm left with is a really sore neck. My brother who did it with me does jiu-jitsu, and I think that really helped him because he's got a more developed neck. And one of my takeaways is 20 years, 25 years of removed from water polo, I got to work on my neck. But then you grab a flag and you run to ground zero where you do your final set of 100 push-ups and 22 pull-ups. And it's incredibly inspiring. I think you're in. Young Establishment James. That's what I hear. You want to do it next time.
Absolutely, 100%. Training's already begun.
What are you guys laughing at?
I don't
He
know.
can do it. He was a swimmer in high school.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I did forget that. Sorry. I didn't mean to laugh. It's just intense, man. It looks so hard.
It's inspiring.
It is intense. I will tell you, I'm scrolling through pictures here. You can see some of the guys did it with us on this past Saturday. This is Brent, member of the Willitia.
Nice.
There's some special, there was a special needs, special Olympian, Down syndrome kid who did it. Now, he had a guy named Scuba who was described to me as one of the best swimmers to ever go through the ranks of Navy SEAL, swimming alongside him, but he pulled it off. I mean, there was a 17-year-old kid who did it. There was a 77-year-old Vietnam vet. There was an 80-year-old man who did this. So, I don't think there's many excuses. You can get yourself ready. You can do this.
Have you ever ran a marathon before yourself?
I haven't. Now, I was invited by the SEAL Foundation to do the 2025 New York City Marathon, and they said they could get me a bib. Now, I hate nothing more than running, and so that's more intimidating to me.
Got it.
Than any swim. But there's a little bit of me that wants to check off that box to run the New York City Marathon.
That was my question. I've run the marathon, and I wonder if how similar it is in terms of how difficult mentally and physically that would be comparatively.
I'm going to guess for me, the marathon would be much more difficult.
Gotcha.
Whenever I talk to people, the things that they say are the swim and the pull-ups. Now, pull-ups for me are not the hardest part. They're actually one of the easier parts. The push-ups are harder for me than the pull-ups. I've done enough CrossFit in my life that I've figured out how to do a pull-up. But, I think the swim is what intimidates a lot of people away. In the end, I want to share this. These are my 4 takeaways, okay? The physical aspect. You can get there, and that's the big payoff. I mean, it is the year or however long you're going to put into getting into this, either because of vanity or because you simply need it to get through the event. But I think you should do hard things. I think you should challenge your body. Matthew McConaughey talked about your spirit, your career, your friends, family, and your body. It's one of the stools. It's one of the legs on the stool. And you got to do this. And I think this is a great way to inspire you to rise physically. 2, there's just such an awesome sense of brotherhood. I'm not a Navy SEAL, and I would not pretend to be. And I'm not Navy SEAL by proximity. I don't believe in any of that stuff. But it is whether or not you are a member of the community, you're around the community, whatever, or you just do hard things together as men, there's just such an awesome sense of fraternity, of brotherhood. And I want to stop for myself for a minute and correct myself because it's not just men. The first person out of the water was a woman. She was the fastest person there. There was a 62-year-old badass woman who I looked at and talked with who was an Army vet who was absolutely kicking ass. So it's a sense of brotherhood that actually also included some badass women. 3, the symbolism. Man, swimming underneath the Statue of Liberty is just incredible. Running through the streets of downtown Manhattan with the American flag, with the bagpipes playing, the Freedom Tower over you and the reflecting pond below you is just an incredibly inspiring, symbolic moment of America. But finally, 4, and this may be, my biggest takeaway from this year. People come up to you throughout the event and they share with you their stories. One of the reasons you do 22 pull-ups is to signify the number of vets who commit suicide every day. And everybody almost has a story. And you hear these throughout the day, and you hear guys' individual stories. But, I gave several hugs to moms. And at this point, it's moms who are getting pretty close to my age who have lost their sons. I've gone from meeting people where their sons were my age to now where I'm the age of the mothers almost. And, I'll just give you Cindy Dietz. She's the mother of Danny Dietz. And if anybody's ever read Lone Survivor or seen the movie Lone Survivor, Marcus Luttrell was the sole survivor of the 4 who were killed that day. And then the others that were killed in Extortion 17, the biggest loss of life in the history, I believe, in one incident of the Navy SEALs. And, Danny Dietz's mom, kayaked next to Bill Brown, the founder of this event, and came up to me and gives you a hug. And all of a sudden, even the symbolism, certainly the physical challenge, and the brotherhood take a back seat to the sacrifice that you feel that is much bigger than any sacrifice you put in to pull this off. It's incredible. I invite all 3 of you guys next year to join me on the 2025 New York City Navy SEAL Swim, and so many people listening and watching. We're a community as well. We're a brotherhood, so we'll figure it out together. We'll coordinate with Bill Brown. We'll put together a Will Cain Show team, and we'll do the 2025 New York City Navy SEAL Swim. Coming up next, let's speak to a former Navy SEAL, but also the former CEO and founder of Blackwater, one of the world's biggest private security contractors who never lost a protectee, about the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. Erik Prince coming up next on The Will Cain Show.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network, the Fox News Rundown, a contrast of perspectives you won't hear anywhere else. Your daily dose of news twice a day, going far beyond the headlines, tapping into the massive reporting resources of Fox News to provide a full picture of the news of the day.
I'm Dana Perino.
I'm Brett Baer.
I'm Maria Bartiromo.
I'm Brian Kilmeade, and this is the Fox News Rundown.
Subscribe and listen now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Did you hear the news? Now you can, with instant updates from Fox News for Amazon Alexa, breaking stories and top headlines, the economy, and so much more. Brought to you by Fox News, America's #1 cable news network. Plus, setup couldn't be easier because everything's ready to go in the app. Just say,
Alexa, play news from Fox.
In Fox News.
it's the latest when you need it, on demand, from Fox News and Amazon Alexa. Get all of your favorite Fox News podcasts commercial-free on Apple Podcasts with Fox News Podcasts Plus. From Dana Perino, Kennedy, Ben Domenech, The Duffys, and many more. Subscribe now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com. The Fox News Rundown, a contrast of perspectives you won't hear anywhere else. Your daily dose of news twice a day, featuring insight from top newsmakers, reporters, and Fox News contributors. Listen and subscribe now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com.
How does something like a 20-year-old dude, a 22-year-old kid, get up on top of a rooftop and take a shot that hits the ear of a former president? How does something like the attempted assassination of Donald Trump happen in 2024? Let's break that down. Plus, where are we when it comes to what stage of empire are we in the United States? It's the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel, the Fox News Facebook page, and always on demand at Apple or Spotify or on YouTube. Joining me now on the Will Cain Show is a former Navy SEAL. He's also the founder and CEO of Blackwater. He is now, by the way, the host of Off Leash with Erik Prince, the author of Civilian Warriors. And he's the founder of a new phone to help you protect your privacy, Unplugged. It's Erik Prince on the Will Cain Show. What's up, Erik?
Will, how are you? I'm jealous
good.
you got to do the swim. I did the first one they did a few years back.
Oh, you did? The first one was with my buddy Pete Hegseth. I think he was there for that one. And there was, from what I understand, there was only 30 SEALs that year. This year, by the way, 350 participants, something like 100 SEALs. So it's really grown. But you were part of the first effort, which would have been pretty special with just 30 guys.
It was. We didn't have to wear buoys or anything. And they were still trying to figure out the navigation. And I remember I was in the first pair off of the Ellis Island stop, and we couldn't really see exactly where we were going because the waves were big, and you have to basically aim at Governor's Island because the current was pushing so hard. And I asked a New York or a Jersey state cop. I said, "Hey, there's no way we can nav. There's no way." It was such a tiny spot in Battery Park. He said, "Stand by," and they got this fireboat, turned on all the deck guns, and put up this 100 meters in the air arches of water. It was the definitely moments you remember forever.
Well, that audible that you had them call is now, I think, baked into the cake. That happens every year. And I never even realized it was to help us spot, because one of the things they do is, churn the water to try to move the logs and rats and maybe dead bodies floating around the Hudson, turn it out of your path. And I got to tell you, Erik, like it's my third time to do it, my second official time. I did it with Bill a year ago, just Bill Brown, myself, and another guy on a what he calls a dial-in swim, a test swim.
Okay.
So I've done it 3 times, 2 times officially. But this one hurt the most, Erik. I mean, my neck hurts because of high waters. And I'm not going to lie, I'm pumping a little zinc and vitamin D this morning because there's a little after effect from the Hudson.
Yeah, my face got really infected.
Really?
When I did it.
Your face.
Right underneath my goggles. I don't know what it was, but I'm okay now.
I'm glad to hear it. Erik Prince here on the Will Cain Show. So, Erik, listen, I was watching you on the Tucker Carlson network. I was watching as well with Sean Ryan. I was listening to you talk about a lot of different subjects, some of which I want to hit with you here today. You're the founder. You are the CEO of Blackwater. And I think that leads you as obviously an area of expertise when it comes to the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. But in listening to you in these interviews, Erik, one of the things that really stood out to me, and I hope this doesn't come across as patronizing in a way, but I think it's just very unique, is your understanding of history. In your answers to Tucker and to Sean, you're constantly weaving in historical examples, whether or not it's the Pinkertons, it's whether or not it's the assassination attempt of the Archduke Ferdinand that leads to World War I, or bringing up the Roman Empire. And just listening to you in those 2 interviews, one of the things I thought I want to start with, Erik, is just ask him, as that student of history, where do you think we are in America? Like, as an empire, like, what stage is this empire? Where are we at this moment in American history?
I'm afraid we're not in the ascendant phase. And when you think about the 5 counties surrounding Washington, D.C. are per capita the wealthiest in the country. It has all the negative aspects of what ancient Rome had in its last 100 years of complete decadence. And the elites that benefit from the largesse spent by Washington reflected in those home values. And that it causes such a detachment in decision-making from what the rest of the country is actually enduring. And that's the root of those problems. But the benefit is the founding fathers, our founding fathers, were so genius in writing the Constitution. They had anticipated pretty much every stupid thing political entities could do and try to get away with when they wrote this. And so they give us the formulas to save this thing if we just pay attention to it. Pounding on the 10th Amendment, that anything not specifically delegated to the federal government is the sole purview of the states. And so much of our problems with America, most communities, pretty good shape. State governments, most of them in good shape. Why? Because they can't create money. Federal government is so bad because they have unbelievable deficit spending where they can spend on themselves with really no accountability. There's never a guns or butter decision making. It's guns and butter and then 10 times more. If we get to the point that we could put the federal government on a proper diet, everything is going to get a lot better.
Do you think that diagnosis, Erik Prince, you serve here as the doctor for America, and you've just made the diagnosis, but do you think the prescription which you described, which 10th Amendment, localism, a decentralization of power, is an realistic, therapeutic goal that can be achieved? So what I mean by that is, I went to law school. I studied the Constitution. I understand the way things should work. But I also heard, for example, her name is escaping me, but she was a guest this weekend on Fox and Friends, and she is a Chinese dissident and a Chinese refugee, say you can vote your way into socialism, but you can't vote your way out of socialism.
You shoot your way out.
How do you... So there, you begin the answer to the question is the problem, Erik. And I saw you, I think this was with Tucker, it could have been with Sean Ryan, where we talked about the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, how that can lead to a civil war. And you said, regrettably, obviously, this wasn't wishful thinking. That was a regrettable prediction. That kind of thing can lead to civil war. But I don't know how we turn theory into practice, Erik, of decentralizing federal government.
I would say in the next administration, the most important members of Congress to really go after and pressure are the appropriators. They are the ones that feed the beast. If we force them by getting in their face every day to spend less, and an administration that will enforce discipline and veto bills unless they spend less, I think we all agree that the federal government tries to do way too many things, and we're like a big a brontosaurus stumbling around, drunken one, that the whole thing needs to be put on a diet. And the way you put it on a diet, the downside of all the sanctions and all the foreign policy setbacks we've been having the last few years means that the dollar is really on the way out as the world's reserve currency. That's a good thing and a bad thing. Our entire way of life, the debt, $35 trillion in deficit spending, is literally 25% of all that deficit spending has come in just the last 4 years. Think of that. Just in the last 4 years.
That's
staggering.
Yeah, like any.
But when we can't do that again, we can't keep doing that because the defense budget is now, we pay more in interest on that debt than we even pay for defense. And so soon enough, the budget, the diet is going to be forced upon us. And when it is, you'll start to see government expands at the expense of liberty. And if we see less of a federal government, I think that's a good thing overall, because we could do with a lot less defense spending, a lot less social spending, just a lot less all spending. I'm in favor of cutting it all radically. What Milei did in Argentina, he took a absolute mess of an inflationary monster and put it on a diet. And in 4 months, he got them to a balanced budget. It would be the equivalent of taking like $800 billion out of our federal budget. He did that in Argentina. So it can be done. Leadership matters, and holding people accountable. You talk about the debacle of the Secret Service and the assassination attempt on Trump. That is just another symptom of federal incompetence and bloat, and in a true culture of no one ever being fired, because go along to get along is has become the way of the land. Whether it's a complete screw up in Afghanistan, a complete screw up in Iraq, a Navy that can't finish the Houthis, so now they've shut off one of the world's major waterways. Fentanyl crisis, border crisis, you just have a constant drip, not even a drip, a fire hose of failure. And I think as Americans, it's time to expect more. And we certainly expect more in most of our local communities, state governments. Federal government is awful. And you know what? Just imagine if the federal government went away tomorrow, the state of Virginia would have a larger economy than Austria. Texas would be what, 5th or 6th largest economy in the world. The 50 states of America, whether they are united or not, would still be significant powerhouse economies. We just have a federal government that's just way too big, and it needs to be put on a severe diet. And that is the root of the problem. Look, if you look back to the Roman Empire, with the Roman Empire, they had gold coins, and they would start shaving them. Right? So their inflation came from literally trying to stretch their monetary supply because they couldn't print money. But that ended, obviously, they ran out of money to pay their soldiers, and the Visigoths walked into Rome and took it. The Weimar Republic, Germany in the 20s, Germany was amazing, industrial society, very disciplined, organized, took on much of the world in World War I. Had punitive fines they had to pay for World War I. It's a terrible peace settlement. And they started printing their money, lots of it. And I actually have a collection of Deutschmarks from that period. You see beautiful notes that are 1 mark, 5 mark, 10 mark. And then it went to 20,000, 50,000, 1 million, all the way to 1 billion and 10 billion mark notes, where they would just take old ones and restamp the new value on the bills. And they elected Hitler. They elected someone that was going to make that insanity stop, because literally it destroyed that kind of inflation, annihilated the savings of the entire country. If you didn't own land, that was the only asset that wasn't inflated away. But any kind of savings or stock, anything, toast. So the inflation we're experiencing now is a direct result of the Inflation Reduction Act and all the other nonsense that was pushed through Congress by the Biden administration. The really disgusting thing is, even the federal government doesn't track inflation anymore accurately, because they try to take the cost of housing out, or they take the cost of energy out. If you track back to when they started tracking inflation, the same numbers, we'd have double-digit inflation now easily. And it's bad when you can't get any part of the government to actually tell you the truth anymore. Yeah,
well, that's on every subject. They've earned. It's a well-earned skepticism, a well-earned cynicism when it comes to the truth coming out of the government. It's an interesting perspective that you bring to us because, look, as the CEO of Blackwater, you were a direct beneficiary of government spending. I mean, you got huge amounts of government contracts. But what I've heard you talk about is, because of that insider experience, you also, know directly and can give us examples of we're not talking about small inefficiencies, massive inefficiencies when it comes to, for example, war fighting. And I've heard you talking about, we're only headed in a way where war fighting is more advanced and yet cheaper at the same time, with drone warfare and so forth. So our adversaries can pull off more impressive feats at cheaper rates while we have this massive amount of spending for less results.
You're 100% correct. And just to be clear, in the Blackwater days, like 98% of our revenue was competitively bid. The other 2%, literally no one in the world wanted to do except us. So yeah, in that case, government had a requirement. They would put out a bid and we would bid. And look, from the early days, I started building Blackwater. I focused on making it very, very efficient because my family's business came from the automotive supply, which is a hyper competitive business where you can lose the business for a few pennies per part. And so we really focused on driving efficiencies and driving out waste. And no one does that in the federal government. No one does that in federal procurement at all, which is why we spend more than the next 17 countries combined on defense, and we don't have a lot to show for it.
I want to ask you, Erik, as just a complete dummy. When it comes to private contracting, I mean, your company maybe specifically has been alluded to. It's always the bad guy in the movies. Like when it comes to Tom Clancy or Jack Carr or any of Brad Thor, any of these novels, who is the closest to reality? Like when I watch or read any of these things about some of the black ops, special ops going on, who do you think is doing the best? I worked a ranch in Montana one time, and one of the things the cowboy that I worked for loved about, for example, Larry McMurtry and Lonesome Dove, he's like closest to the real thing, in terms of like the wagons they were using, everything. So you as the military guy, which fiction is closest to real life?
Boy, I don't know, but they just made a series on the founding of the SAS, which is fantastic. It's called Rogue Heroes. It's the first time a book was written based on the original source files from the SAS, patrol logs, correspondence of Sterling, etc. It's on Amazon, and it's fantastic. And it really shows when a country was in great danger, 40 wild men showed up and had a very outsized effect on the battlefield. It made it possible for the UK to hang on to Malta. And the SAS, they destroyed more German aircraft and Italian aircraft than the entire British Air Force did, because they hunted it the old-fashioned way. Why do people rob banks? It's where the money is. You want to go kill airplanes? Go attack an airfield on the ground and kill everything there. They had a very clear purpose, and they got a job done.
I'll have to watch
that. The second season comes out this fall.
SAS.
The second season will be Sicily, and the third season is the campaign in Europe all the way to Berlin.
So, as something you've said, and I said it in your introduction, never lost a protectee in the Blackwater days, in the contracts and assignments that you guys had. As you look at the assassination on Donald Trump, I've listened to some of your answers, and it's really interesting. When I listen to you answer this question I'm about to ask you, you don't close the door on what we would describe as conspiracy. You don't say, okay, people will say, is it an inside job? Was it a stand down? And you have pointed out, I would investigate every potential possibility. I don't close that door. But it seems like you gravitate towards incompetence, just a general inability of, in this case, a government entity in the Secret Service to do its job, that it isn't run by merit. Yes. It has no accountability. And one of the things you said was really fascinating to me. Goes like, if I were trying to assassinate somebody, if it were a conspiracy, I wouldn't pick, what was he, 20 years old? Some 20-year-old local.
Correct. Guy. Yeah, and make the first shot a center mass shot, not a headshot. If you're aiming at a 78-year-old man and you hit him here or here or here, the result's still going to be the same. Because I don't think Trump was wearing plates.
And so this is just part of your larger takeaway, Erik, what you're talking about when it comes to government. It's just not good at doing its job. And I know you said, I don't take away from some individual Secret Service agents, some, but just as entities. And what is it? Is it, it's not Murphy's Law or Occam, what is it? Occam's razor? I always get these mixed up, but like, it's usually incompetence that is to explain for bad things happening.
Yes, it's actually harder to generate that level of conspiracy. The idea of a second shooter, well, then why wasn't he shooting at them when the president was up and exposed after the original rounds were fired? That protective detail should have had him off the X, undercover, and gone. So here's what absolutely happened. The left has so unfairly demonized Donald Trump, calling him everything, including Hitler, that he is the absolute coming of the Antichrist. You can do anything and everything to stop him. That opens the door intellectually for every idiot lone wolf out there, every 20-year-old that's completely misguided to say, I'm going to do my part, step up and be relevant, and I'm going to assassinate Donald Trump. So absolutely, yes. Reckless speech, that 100% that happened. You know that happened. The fact that Jill Biden had 12 protective agents on her that day, and Donald Trump had 4 host standers, is also problematic because she has no constitutional authority. She's not elected. She doesn't have any of the protective status really that Donald Trump does. The fact is, most of the people on that detail were HSI agents. Okay, and HSI is a new fancy term for what used to be ICE agents, because they didn't like the branding of ICE, so they recalled them, or they renamed them HSI. Clearly no training, clearly had not drilled attack on principle drills and just all the basics as you'd expect a team to cover. Probably had not done a lot of firearms training, had not really focused on reholstering, drawing and reholstering their weapons under stress. And I'm sorry for the people that were put in those positions that day, literally their moment of truth, with all the eyes of the world watching them, and they were tested and they were shown to be unready. Bad on their leadership, bad on them, or not prepping for that, literally their day of day. But no, I still come down to it's just incompetence, and it's a culture of people not getting not getting fired, or completely screwing up. And again, that we have a habit of that in America now in the federal government, and whether it's planes are going to be falling out of the skies, or competence and accountability matters, merit matters, nothing else does, period.
And I think when I listen to you say
our
that,
our society, the affluence of the American capitalist system came because the best ideas, the best products win, not based on equality not equity of outcome. And it comes down really to a very different paradigm in this election. Do we want a system that promotes based on race and what the outcome should be, versus we want the very best to do whatever? If you have a brain, if you have a 10% chance to live because you have an inoperable brain tumor, but somebody's going to go have a go at your brain, do you want the very best person cutting and sewing, or do you want the most diverse candidate? I think it's a pretty clear answer.
Well, I've heard you say this, and DEI certainly plays a role, but it's not just DEI. So in other words,
nope.
There can be very competent and meritorious individuals in the Secret Service or in whatever walk of life, but the world works via incentive. I heard you give this stat, I didn't know this, that when it came to Benghazi, the direct federal government employees on site, on location in Benghazi, fired 0 shots. Now, what's fascinating about that, Erik, to me is I don't know who those individuals were, but my presumption isn't that those guys were DEI oriented or weren't there by their own merit. But when you have a system of decision making that incentivizes even CYA, not just DEI, but CYA, the way we've done with cops now, never make a mistake. If your job is not, if your primary priority is not to get something accomplished, but to avoid mistakes, then you are going to operate like that. So the point I'm making is this is so cancerous that it turns actually merit-oriented, really competent individuals into people that can't accomplish a mission.
Correct. Look, I don't care which bathroom people use, who they sleep with, how they zip up their zipper. I don't care. If it comes to protective agent, I want someone that understands how to do advance, can shoot, move, and communicate, and execute the mission to as close to perfection as possible. And anything that distracts from that is destroying that capability. And but that's a paradigm that has infected all aspects of federal government life. And so if people say there's a lot of effed up things in America right now, yeah, there are, because we've gotten away from actually what made America function in the first place.
Okay, last question for Erik Prince here on the Will Cain Show. Erik, you've been behind the scenes, you've seen everything. What's the biggest threat to America right now? I mean, it seems like we're moving from, the war on terror into a nation state threat to America, whether or not that's China. I don't know. Others say Russia. But what is, in terms of, I guess an existential threat to America through violent action, what is the biggest threat to America?
Well, the Chinese Communist Party has made it their goal to overthrow the entire Westphalian order. That's exactly what the ruler Xi Jinping says when he, in speeches to the Politburo and the Standing Committee. He said it is the mission of the CCP to undo that and to reimagine it, to reorganize it in the image of how China, the Communist Party, rules China. So that is antithetical to every way of life we have here, every part of our way of life. But the intellectual fellow travelers in big tech and big media and big government that want to have social credit scores and cancel people and get away from free speech and get away from merit-based, so that you're hired based on who your race is or your gender classification or whatever insanity they're coming up with this week. Those are all elements. There are so many elements of the Democrat Party platform that mirror the Chinese Communist Party's approach to ruling China, that to me, that paradigm is the greatest threat to American liberty.
All right, Erik Prince. By the way, check out his new phone, Unplugged. Focuses on ways you can protect your privacy. You got one right there? I see he's holding.
Which is why we built this phone, because it is independent of the Google and Apple universe. We wanted a phone that was uncancelable, that doesn't collect your data, that allows you to have basically to protect your First and your Fourth Amendment rights. This phone doesn't have an advertising
I also want you to
ID.
swim with this next year.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, I want an unplugged phone, Erik, and I mean, you've done it, so I'm not going to throw down a challenge or anything, but I'd love to see you next year. I'm going to do it again, I think. I know I'm going to do it again next year.
I'll be there. Listen, I was going to be there, but I had a meeting. Do you wear fins, right?
Yeah. Are you? Oh boy, here we go. Yeah, me and everybody else.
Yeah.
There's like a few that didn't wear fins. Yeah.
So
I thought you were about to say I'm going barefoot.
No.
Yeah, definitely wear fins. Awesome, Erik Prince next year in the New York City SEAL Swim. Appreciate having you on the show today, Erik.
Okay, Will, take care.
Okay, there he goes, Erik Prince. By the way, after I was talking to Pete Hegseth after the SEAL Swim, I will tell you this quick story. So I was sitting at a bar afterwards, and I was talking to a SEAL. I said, "Hey, what percentage of the community would you say supports Donald Trump?" And he goes, 99. And he goes, wait, let me adjust that. And I thought he was going to go 70. He goes, 98. And he said, maybe because some of the officer corps in pursuit of careerism has to go a different direction. And Pete and I were like, doesn't that tell you something? Like, that says something. And you can decide what it says. But 98% of your operators, your special, your SEAL teams, I can't speak for the other ones, go a certain direction. I don't know. I think it says something. Maybe we can find out what it says. We'll talk to Senior Advisor to Donald Trump, Alina Habba, next on The Will Cain Show.
It's time to take the quiz. 5 questions, 5 minutes a day, 5 days a week.
History, pop culture, science, sports, civics. How much do you know? Let's find out.
Who was the first person to walk on the moon?
Jackson or something?
Neil Armstrong.
Take the quiz every weekday at thequiz.fox and then listen to the quiz podcast to find out how you did.
Play, share, and of course, listen to The Quiz right now at thequiz.fox.
Streaming now on Fox Nation, a new season of Duck Family Treasure.
It's treasure time.
The Robertsons are back.
Duck hunt, treasure hunt, finally go.
Tell the ducks we coming.
For their biggest.
You gotta cut a squirrel in half.
Beeping season ever.
Go big or go home.
All new episodes.
Looking at what we find doesn't tell the story.
One unforgettable season.
When you see how we find it, it'll ignite the engine.
My hand is shaking.
A new season of Duck Family Treasure, streaming now on Fox Nation. Sign up at foxnation.com.
Kudlow on Fox Business is now on the go for podcast fans. Download the Kudlow Show podcast every weekday at foxbusinesspodcasts.com. Kudlow covers the latest headlines and business trends with an emphasis on the financial impact facing households and businesses across the country. Listen to interviews with key business newsmakers. The Kudlow podcast will be available on the go after the show every weekday at foxbusinesspodcasts.com or wherever you download your favorite podcasts.
Kamala Harris riding momentum up in the polls. What does that mean for the campaign strategy for Donald Trump? It is the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel and the Fox News Facebook page. Hit subscribe at Apple or Spotify or on YouTube. Joining us now on the phone, senior advisor to Donald Trump for President 2024, Alina Habba. Alina, good to have you on the show today. I'm glad you could jump on. I know you had a lot going on, but I'm happy you jumped on the phone with us.
That's all right. This is important. Thank you for having me.
Tell me what's going on inside the campaign. You know, everyone's talking about this momentum, this honeymoon period for Kamala Harris, that the polls are trending her way. You know, I think it has put you guys in a bit of a position. Like, what is the affirmative argument to make right now to attempt to burst this bubble?
Sure. There is no bubble because we've seen her policies. It's the same ones we've lived for 3.5 years. So just because we put a corpse out and put a human body in doesn't mean that the policies have changed at all. You know, she uses the lines from Donald Trump like no tax on tips in her rally like she did yesterday, and she can try and act like she's going to make empty promises, but she's currently in the administration. So let's remember that the policies don't work. They're the reason we're in the mess economically. They're the reason we're in the mess we're in with criminals everywhere, open borders, fentanyl surging. People can't get mortgages. People can't get groceries. You know, this is the person currently in the White House. So when we say honeymoon period, I think it's exactly that. Like, you couldn't have gotten anybody who got less of a pulse than Joe Biden, but we can't get anybody who's more radical than Kamala Harris. And frankly, her VP running mate just made it even worse, right? So here we are.
Alina, your phone is cracking up a little bit on us. I think my producer said he can get that fixed. So we're going to try to get that fixed here while I set you up for the next question. I think Alina makes a very interesting point. She brings up that what you're asking the American public to believe is that the answer to the problems of the last 3.5 years is to continue with the same leadership from the last 3.5 years. Kamala Harris can't represent renewed hope or inspiration if she's literally the same leadership team from the past that has led to a lack of hope and inspiration. But I still wonder if and when that message will resonate with the American people. 2 days, I don't know if you have fixed the phone call with Alina, if you're trying to get her back on the phone right now, but I want to ask you, Alina, when you say there is no bubble to me, and I heard the argument that you made, I don't know if you heard me just now, right. I totally get that. But when you say there is no bubble, do you think the polls right now, do you think that whatever is going on with Kamala Harris is not real? Because now they do see her for whatever reason as this new inspiration.
Right. That's why we're calling it a honeymoon phase, right? We're not ignoring polls. Polls are polls. Right. I think what you have to look at is why are they happening? Well, his polls were, President Trump crushed Biden, which is why they kicked him out. And now they've got Kamala Harris, and anybody who is, always going to vote Biden might be excited that now we have somebody who can speak and isn't on the beach ordering ice cream. So, of course, there's this rejuvenation because of the new face, but it's not a new face. And that's why we say it's a honeymoon period. Once people get over this, they're going to have to look at the policies. Once there's an actual debate, I assure you, things will go back to where they were when President Trump debated Joe Biden. And that's the truth of it. She hasn't done interviews because she cannot speak off script. And as we all know, President Trump is very strong when it comes to policies. Our country was doing better with his policies. And I don't think Kamala can stand a chance. And frankly, I don't think her VP can either stand a chance when she's asked tough questions without a script. So, I wish the debates were earlier, but obviously, she's running a little bit afraid. She won't do a debate that she can't control. But as soon as those happen, and frankly, I think before that, you'll see a change.
Why before that? Because so I'm curious. What I was going to ask you is it going to take a debate? Because right now I don't see any appetite for the media, outside of Fox and independent media out there. But we can't ignore the fact that mainstream media, legacy mainstream media, corporate CNN, NBC, ABC, all that they still dominate the narrative, the quote unquote narrative, and they don't show any appetite of really scrutinizing Kamala Harris. And so I sit there and think, well, can she hold out for
that's our
3
job.
months? And I think that
right.
And so that's what I ask you. Like when you say it's your job, that's a debate.
Right.
That's you pushing out your messaging. But you just said maybe it could even happen before debate. How?
Messaging. Like you said, I mean, you're answering your own questions, frankly, which, but messaging, you are, but messaging, you're right, messaging. And the more that we get out that her policies are garbage, that her policies are the same one Joe Biden had, she is part of the Biden-Harris administration. She keeps saying she's going to change. Listen, why isn't she doing it now? Why didn't she do it for the last 3.5 years? She's the vice president. She's not doing anything. She's still got another 6 months. Make the changes. Don't talk. Talk is cheap. But that is what I'm saying. We're going to get that out, and that's the most important thing is getting out what they actually have and haven't done, which is a lot of nothing. They've ruined our country. People are going to need to go to the grocery store and remember who's responsible for that. And polls are very up and down, as you've seen. We've had a really strong hold, so strong that their president is now no longer running. So I'm really not concerned. I think that this is temporary, as the campaign said. And, we're going to be hustling till the end, and we know that. But when the American people look at the policies, look at what's happened to our country, she's a part of that, a big part of that. Our border in particular. Her game is changing. Her accent changes every freaking rally she does. And she's frankly just a very phony candidate. And it'll pass. Mark my words.
Back to the messaging for a moment. I think one of the things that maybe since 2020 has been a real point of, I would think, pride, but progress for President Trump has been the ability to win over some people that weren't previously perhaps on the right. Actually, that's been part of his thing from the beginning. I mean, he's won Blue Dog Democrats, union workers in places like Pennsylvania and Ohio. But even since 2020, it's been guys and gals who I don't know if they would have called it. Yeah, they would have called themselves on the left in many situations. And these are more, I guess, celebrity type figures. Guys like Joe Rogan. And yet on messaging, Donald Trump the other day went after Joe Rogan, which to me is like, wow, I thought that's the group where, and even whatever it was with RFK, was it an endorsement? Was it not an endorsement? Was it a compliment to RFK? But Donald Trump, criticizing Joe Rogan. I know the former president a little bit. Obviously, you know him very well. I know how he is. He's a fighter, gets mad, but I don't know, Alina, if that's the messaging that you want going after a guy like Rogan.
Right. Well, I think President Trump has his own voice. Okay, so there's no question about that. And this Joe Rogan, somebody who we all know, I know Joe Rogan, he knows Joe Rogan. And I do think it was surprising, his comments about RFK, to be honest. But in terms of campaign, we're going to attack Kamala and her VP on policies, on real issues. And I think that's what people want to hear. They want to hear about policies and real issues. So I agree with you on that. And I think that is what we need to do. Get to the bottom of the real stuff. People are tired of kind of the fluff. I think a lot of that was the legal stuff that they threw at him in an attempt to get him out of the election. That didn't work. And now we got less than 90 days. We got to get into policies. And our policies work and hers don't. And we know that because he was president. And guess what? She was VP. And we saw that. So, yeah, I agree. I would like to get into the policies. I think that's where the strategy for the next few months needs to be. And, that's going to be definitely a focus of mine for sure.
Debates, really quickly, you brought it up. Where's the status? Where are we, Alina? We've got one on ABC. Are we going to have more? Right. Where are they going to be? Will Kamala agree to a Fox debate?
I don't know. I don't speak for her camp. And if what I know of her,
She runs scared. She has not spoken to the press off script, like I said, for weeks. I think that's incredibly damaging. They're going to hide her in the basement, it looks like, just like they did with Joe Biden. President Trump has publicly, as you saw in his press conference, offered 2 more dates that have been coordinated. Her team has been contacted. And, if you want to talk about a chicken, there's a chicken. Step up. Don't do debates that are only on your terms. What a joke. First it was Joe Biden, his rules, regulations on his terms. Now we got another one she agreed to. President Trump agreed to it. But there's one person that's willing to do them and one person that's only willing to do them the way they want. And that's ridiculous. So they've been offered. The networks have spoken to her team, and we're waiting to see what she does and doesn't do. So your guess is as good as mine at this point, but President Trump is ready to do 3 debates.
Ready to do 3 debates sooner rather than later, you said, you hope. And, I think we all do. I think we all need to hear that. I know you have a really busy day, a lot going on, so I appreciate you giving us a little time, jumping on with us today on the Will Cain Show, Alina. Thank you.
For sure. Thank you so much.
All right. There she is, Alina Habba, senior advisor to the Donald Trump campaign for president 2024. 2 things. I tweeted this out the other day. It was fairly viral. Look, Trump has said, and I mean, basically he said, I'll do a debate anywhere, anytime, any place. That's what he said. I saw this went super viral because people are like, well, how many debates did you do in the primary? It doesn't matter. It's different. Now he would be willing to debate Biden anytime, any place. The only stipulation I ever saw that he did with Biden was he didn't want to sit down. He wanted to stand during that debate. And it was one and done for Biden. And he's offered to have a debate basically anywhere at any time with Kamala Harris. But he wanted to have one of them on Fox, Brett Baer and Martha McCallum. And the only one that Kamala has agreed to is ABC, which, by the way, Trump is in a lawsuit with ABC because of a defamation case against George Stephanopoulos over continuing to what he accused Donald Trump. I think, did he use the word rape or sexual assault? Whatever it is, it's not what Donald Trump, it's not true. And so there's a defamation case there. And yet he's still going to do a debate with that news organization, with that organization, ABC. And Kamala hasn't agreed. Those are the facts to this right now. And Alina brought up the word. Here's what's interesting. I think people often make decisions when it comes to elections on fairly superficial things. I do think they care about policy. I don't think the American people are stupid, but I don't underestimate the power of superficial presentation. And there are crosswinds, I think, happening with Kamala Harris right now. I think she's appealing. I think, she has a pleasant smile, a demeanor about her that is playing into the whole joy. You've seen the word joy. Oh, bringing joy. That's propaganda from the mainstream media. And it's an attempt to spin a liability into an asset. The liability is her laugh, which is, everyone knows, is a huge turnoff to people. It's superficial, but it's important. And that is, and the mainstream media is playing along. That's why it's propaganda, turning that liability into asset, but describing it the return of joy. But her demeanor, I think, is appealing to people and helps give this sense of positivity around her campaign. But the crosswind with that is that, again, on superficial levels, a lot of people see her as phony, very phony. It's a fake laugh. It's a fake joy. It's fake policies. It's a fake accent, depending on who the crowd is, that it's a phony. And so when Habba says they're going to focus on policy, I do think that's important. I also think you have to make the case about who's real. The guy who wears a suit and tie in front of every audience, makes the same argument, uses the same accent, is the same person, no matter who he's talking to, or the chameleon who has a different accent and different policies, depending upon the audience in front of them at any given moment. I think that's incredibly powerful. Who's a phony? All right, that's going to do it for us today here on the Will Cain Show. Same time, same place tomorrow. We'll see you again next time.